Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Look, I'm pretty good, Alex. If I'm being honest, I'm a little conflicted at the moment. Disappointment with results and this never-ending saga, which maybe,
Maybe
maybe.
ending. It's been a long 24 hours since SM said he would sell the club in 24 hours. It's been a long 24 hours, but we might finally be into the last 15 minutes of that 24 hours, perhaps. We'll say. I've got one eye on Twitter, sort of as we're talking. You never know what's going to pop up all of a sudden. But look, as you did touch on there, we'll start with that game against Stoke, which was a pretty disappointing display. And look, if it served to sort of speed up the EFL and to tell them that we kind of needed to get moving on this takeover, maybe it served a purpose. But look, it's reminiscent of sort of those worst defeats that we had at the start of the season with, one shot on target for the whole game. But how did you see it, and how did you see the result?
I was really actually optimistic heading into the game after, the FA Cup performance against Everton. I thought, we've got over the shakies we had at the beginning of December. But they just didn't turn up at all. Some people were saying it was the worst performance of the season so far. I actually kind of put it pretty level with the Blackpool game just before we had our COVID outbreaks, which was another really, really disappointing flat performance. I guess the only advantage in that one was we had a couple of half chances that we maybe could have scored, but we didn't really look like offering much at all going forward against Stoke. They were carving us up with ease. Our usual reliable, dependable players seemed to be missing. It was really disappointing almost all around, apart from, I think I called early on in the game, McLaughlin did something and I called him MVP, and then about 2 minutes later he was the one who didn't track his defender for them to score the goal. But I think he was one of a few players who stood up and tried to at least make amends, make a difference in the game with a lot of last-ditch efforts that prevented goals. Spared, Greaves and Bernard and Baxter a few blushes, I think, a few times. And then I think it was the subs pretty much who came on and at least tried to do something. But looked at McCann decided to start Huddleston, and I think I said in the chat that I was pleased but surprised because I love Huddleston. I think he's a great player, and I've loved him ever since I started following the club. But I just don't think he's, after having so long out of the game over the last 18 months, and then his injury issues this year, I just don't think he really has the legs to start games. I mean, potentially you could pick and choose the right game, a team that doesn't maybe play such high energy football, but he was exposed many times when their dynamic midfield was breaking through ours. Unfortunately, when he was on the ball, I had no problems with actually what he was doing on the ball. He was able to get under control and find the pass away. He didn't often lose it when he had possession, but regaining possession was a bit of an issue for him. There's a couple of I think he was one of 3 players that lunged, which ended up with Doherty getting a yellow card. I can't remember who was the first to lunge, but someone lunged, then Huddleston lunged
probably
out.
Bernard. This is probably a safe bet. He likes it. He likes a good dive in.
Could have been. Actually, it was one of the centre backs because they went up and then they were coming back and they dived. It might have been McLaughlin, but got past him, then got past Huddleston, and then Doherty just cleaned him up and took the yellow card. But so there's a few things like that, and whenever they were, he had to get dragged out wide to try and stop a runner or whatever. It was never going to sort of work. So I think where we've seen him most effective was when he's brought in late in a game when a lot of that high intensity has been taken out of the game, and it's a matter of a bit of game management in that last 30 minutes, a bit of smarts, someone who can put a ball on a dime essentially and take advantage of a tired defender or a lazy midfielder at that point in the game. But Yeah, I think I was just really disappointed. And I thought after again, like watching Eves and Smith like go at Everton and put in probably for both of them probably their best performances at the club. Which is a bigger thing for Eves than it is for Smith probably. And then for them to come out and offer almost nothing for big periods of the game against Stoke was quite disappointing. And I see you sort of think like if you're only going to get up for an FA Cup game,
Yeah.
you may as well go to a League Two team that's their revenue essentially for the year is the luck of the draw where they get an FA Cup against a Premier League team. You may as well just go and do that and be a cold hero down there. They need to be performing more regularly, and unfortunately they're just not. And Honeyman is quiet again, and when he's quiet, we seem to be ineffective.
Yeah, a few things that you touched on there. So starting with Huddleston, I thought that was a really interesting decision to start him. We sort of debated last week, Logan and myself, about whether he should be starting the game against Stoke. And it's a tough one because you sort of look at his display against Everton and you think, geez, that's such a good performance. He deserves a start. And then, as you've said, I think the fact that he came on against Everton underlines the role that he plays in this side, which is coming on late in the game when teams retired. He can control the tempo of the game. He can spray the passes around as we need him to do, and which he did do. He did against Stoke, as you said. I mean, his passing was not questionable, but his ability to track back and break up the play is almost non-existent with his age and his legs. And I think it was just a really bad decision for McCann to start him in this one. As we sort of say, the Stoke midfield, young, pacey, full of energy. Wright Phillips for them looks an absolute player. I think that was his league debut for them, and you think you wouldn't know it watching him play. He was all over the pitch, causing us issues. But you think when you take Smallwood out of that side, yes, you've got the legs of Doherty and Honeyman, but if you've got them sort of pushing forward and then you've got the centre-backs pushing up the ground as well, it means that when we get caught on the counter, we can get caught out quite badly. And it was, as you said, McLaughlin put in a few really great game-saving or goal-saving tackles and blocks to keep the score as it was 1-0 at half-time, but could easily have been so much more.
I think the other thing is with Smallwood, and I haven't always been like the biggest fan of his, but I think he's sort of just unassuming. Really, a lot of the time he just does the dirty work there, but he in that defensive midfielding or that holding midfield position, he tends to stick a little bit closer to the back line and provide that cover.
Yeah.
Whereas Huddleston was willing to go a bit further forward, which perhaps contributed to us being a little bit more open. But I just think that, as you said, and I sort of said before, it was a poor decision in terms of the management of that. But I think Smallwood with the perfect response, I guess, is what you could say, because he came on and looked to make a difference, looked to make an impact. Even got into the box and tried to score a goal. So I thought he was outstanding when he came on. Everything that we probably were missing for the first hour was in that combative defensive midfielder.
Yeah, which is why it sort of says to me it's more a selection mistake than anything particularly poor with the attitudes of the players, which I know it's hard to say that necessarily with how we performed, but it just seemed as if our tactics and our setup just exposed us to a lot of Stoke pressure. And you look at like Lewis Potter, first 20, 30 minutes of the game looked really sharp and really on it, and then just completely faded out of the game. And I do sort of wonder with him playing wing back, it's just really sort of constricting his ability to get forward and to provide an option. And when you've got Eves and Smith up top, even Eves was dropping really deep to get into the play. And then you think when Eves is dropping deep, it then means you've basically got no outlets up top. So then Honeyman, as you saying, having a bad game, just because he has no one to pass it to. He has no one to sort of open the play up with, great play up forward and running into the box. There's no one up there to feed off. So the system all around just didn't seem to work in this game.
Yeah, and I guess then it becomes I sort of, after watching the game, was wondering whether, like, we persisted with the 4-3-3 for so long, and we called for it to change, and eventually it did, and we all had instant results essentially with that switching to the 3-5-2. But I wonder now if there's enough footage that teams have figured out how to break down our 3-5-2. And
well, that's it, and teams just have to be constantly adapting. You can't just say 4-3-3 works, let's stick with it, and then 3-5-2 works, let's stick with it. You've got to be constantly evolving.
And so I sort of wonder whether it is just that same, we thought, McCann doesn't have any answers apart from the 4-3-3, and now we've changed to 3-5-2. Oh, he's got an answer, but perhaps apart from the system itself or the formation, there is no greater answer, because there needs to be some level of variation in the way that you set up, so that you can try and catch out the other teams, or lull them into something. Even if it means you play what Keane Lewis Potter has to play. Not, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but play super defensive for the first 30 minutes or something, because so they go. They're going, we'll go into this. You can get it in behind Lewis Potter, whatever, rah rah rah. But then they go to try that, and then they, their plan A is gone because we've set up a little bit differently or something.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and look, I noticed. Well, even talking about potentially going to 4-3-3. I mean, I guess the fact we don't really have any fit fullbacks plays into that. But I did notice. I think it was Fleming was on the bench for this game. So
yeah.
And
Festus is now back at the club.
Yeah, that's right.
Another fullback or centre back.
Have another few options there, but I do think it almost means that as much as we're sort of fixating on getting strikers into the club, I think we really just need some fit fullbacks as well. It doesn't look like Emmanuel's back anytime soon. I don't know what the latest on Elder is, whether he'll be fit for tomorrow or the weekend, maybe. And Coyle must be kind of approaching fitness as well, but it sort of says to me we need to get options into the club so that we can actually have that ability to change formations or change the shape when we need it. Baxter as well. Baxter seemed to have an okay game. He sort of grew into the game, I guess. He seemed quite shaky to start off with. You sort of alluded to McLaughlin bailing him out a few times, and there was that instance quite early on where Baxter came out of the box to try and clear the ball. It just seemed like pretty poor communication with the centre halves. What have you made of his form lately?
I thought he was going really well, and I don't know whether it was just one of those players where that break has upset the rhythm that he was in. He hasn't quite been the same. Not that he's necessarily. I think the Blackpool game, which was just, I guess, before our break, but he wasn't necessarily poor in that.
Or just after our break, actually.
Was that the first game after?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think he was necessarily poor in that, because it was only the 1-0. The Everton game, I think there's question marks on the third goal or something. But,
yeah, the Townsend goal.
Yeah, where his positioning wasn't great, which then put him where perhaps he should have made the save, but armchair critics abound. Will tell you that they could have saved that, but
I was quite defensive of him on that one.
At first glance, it just looked like a cracking shot, and then I don't know. There was talk about maybe there was deflection, and maybe there was this, and all these things that perhaps actually count in Baxter's favor, but the game he to me just seemed a little off against Stoke. He seemed, as you alluded to, that communication, it seemed a bit quiet or non-committal or something throughout that first half. It did seem to improve as the game went on, but there was a couple of instances where the ball was coming back, and that I think it might have been Greaves at one point was telling Baxter to come out, and Baxter didn't want to come out, and he sort of half did and then half didn't, and then had to do something. It's just a bit so I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe he went out and partied the night before. Who knows? I don't know. I'd make up any excuse I can.
Yeah.
But I guess it then becomes a thing, because Ingram wasn't actually playing that poor before he was dropped.
Yeah, that's right.
And then if we go into a similar run where with Baxter and goals and we don't win anything for a month or 6 weeks, do we then go, well, now Ingram gets another shot? Or
that's sort of what I'm getting at, because I feel like Ingram was just about player of the season over those first few months, and then didn't really lose his place through any fault of his own. So whether we go back to Ingram, I don't know.
Where's the third keeper? We'll just throw them in
that's
this
right.
time.
That's right. I guess the other issue as well with Greaves and Bernard not having particularly great games, I think it just does it again, like we sort of said after the Blackpool game, where I sort of said, Greaves had a poor game, but I wouldn't advocate dropping him. Again, I wouldn't think. I guess we've got Festus Arthur back now, so we do have a centre back option, but I think it just underlines to me we just need a senior centre back there. I mean, you look at Jagielka slotting in at Stoke and barely breaking a sweat against us for a second game of the season. You just think. I think I saw Baz Cooper put up that article about Curtis Davies, and I thought, oh, that's peak that's peak shithousery with Derby. Going through the troubles that they are, you kind of go in with a nominal bid of, I don't know, 50 grand, 100 grand. They've just sold a player to Wigan for 30 grand. So you go in with an offer of 50 grand for Curtis Davies and say, hey buddy, come home. It's sort of a win-win. You're kind of robbing a relegation rival and strengthening ourselves. But I think we just need a senior centre back there to pull them into line. You look at some of the defending, it just seemed as if they just weren't taking responsibility, and it was somebody else's issue to mark or someone else's issue to close off an opportunity, and they were just looking around for someone else to be doing it. You need that senior figure to sort of get everyone moving in the same direction.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, again, part of this is, what's Bernard's 20, Greaves is 20 something, and McLaughlin's the senior head at
22, maybe 23?
24. I think he's a couple of years older, but he might. But either way, like, there's not a lot of senior experience between those three players. Like, McLaughlin's been with us for what, 3 or 4 years or something, a while.
Just having a look now. Yeah, so he
now
joined us
played 7 games or something.
2019. He's 25. I didn't realize. Yeah, so he did join in 2019. I feel like he went out on loan. I thought he went out on loan somewhere, but he did. Yeah, he went to St Mirren. That's right. I'm surprised actually. He only made 3 appearances last season for us, which, considering he was with us for that whole season, is interesting. But then in the side this season.
So not a lot of age, not a lot of experience, not a lot of of games played. I think even for the best players, it especially over championship season and everything with everything going on. Sorry, for the best, can be hard to maintain high levels throughout. So I don't begrudge them from having a bad or a performance drop every now and then, but they need to find a way, because it's, I guess, you're interspersed with the Everton game where everyone played fantastic, but a couple of league games now in a row and a couple of tough ones coming up. So if the performances don't improve, all of a sudden we're in a slump, or half the back line's in a slump for 4 games, in poor form. So I think obviously an experienced centre back would be the perfect addition to I guess solidify that defense and give these guys some strategies to manage those performances and to work through a period like, hopefully this doesn't develop into, but like potentially could. And I think Davies would be great for so many reasons beyond just his footballing thing and everything. But can you imagine? I'm just like, if this takeover finally happens, Arjun comes in and his first thing is to bring back, a former favorite son, like against, and it's similar to what Newcastle's done to Burnley. Taking their striker, from a relegation rival, and you take him out of there. All of a sudden, they're missing, that key figure from their back line, who's even popping up to score a couple of goals and secure them some points. So, and that'd be another thing he would offer. Someone like Curtis Davies would actually offer us is credible threat in the opposition box off corners.
That's right. Maybe he could teach Greaves how to head a football into the net. Yeah, certainly. No, I think that's definitely the most exciting part about once this takeover is finalised, is actually starting to see some signings brought into the club, and who knows, maybe as soon as today we'll get some sort of word on final, finalised signings. I think is the sense. But anyway, before we move on, we will do our 3, 2, 1 votes for the game. I'll kick things off, and we've sort of already touched on. I think McLaughlin was a standout MVP again. He won Player of the Month last month for the club, which came as no surprise to anyone. Saved us from a number of certain goals. But it says a lot when he's the clear standout. And as you said, I mean, he didn't have a perfect game by any stretch. He had quite a few shaky moments as well. So just goes to show how sort of sparse the options were for votes this week. I gave 2 votes to Williams, who I haven't really touched on, but I thought impressed again off the bench, same as his performance against Everton the previous week. I think he's more than deserving of a start. And, when we're talking about options at wing backs or fullbacks, I mean, he was essentially brought in as a wing back from Exeter. So I feel like if anyone's going to know that role, he could easily slot in at right wing back. If Elder's back, he can slot in at left wing back, and that frees up Lewis Potter to play up forward perhaps. So I'd certainly love to see him get a start tomorrow morning. And then 1 vote I went Smallwood, as you sort of said. I mean, he came on and he showed exactly why he should have been starting that game, and his performance after coming on was spectacular, and I thought he played really well. So he got my 1 vote.
Yeah, look, this is going to be pretty boring. I essentially cannot argue with any of those, or even think of a valid reason to rearrange them. So it's
easy,
pretty much like for like.
Happy days. All right, well, let's move on then. We'll talk off-field discussion now, and there's a rather big piece of off-field news that we've sort of alluded to a little bit. And look, there's nothing finalised just yet. We're waiting for the news overnight our time. Hopefully, it's a nice present to wake up to in the morning before the game. We've said a number of times now, I think the last 2 episodes we've done, we've signed off sort of saying once it's finalised, we're going to do a takeover special. So we will do a takeover special once it's finalised, which I guess probably means an episode tomorrow night. But just as a general sense, it's finally coming to a close. It would take something absolutely calamitous at this stage for the takeover not to happen. So how do you feel now that, how do you feel with the Alum era drawing to a close and a sort of an exciting new era starting for the club?
It is that it's butterflies. It's stepping off the diving board into murky waters, essentially. I'm glad this is finally over, and like things look real nice. Like, as you know, saying the right things and indicating, that he wants to do the right thing by the club, and there are parts of what he says scare me.
Yeah.
Some of the weird references to innovative ideas
Yeah.
that I have I just don't know what that's supposed to entail. And then
They're
you see reports of where reports of where those innovative ideas were a reason why he wasn't allowed to purchase a club elsewhere, and things like that. Look, I'm not completely afraid. I'm not petrified or anything. I think it will be a refreshing change, and I think, look, at least in the very short term, I think things should go really well, because he's going to come in and want to do the right thing and get everyone on side. And then
emphasis
it's just a
on
matter
the short term, though, I think.
Well, the thing is, he's already said their goal is to get the club to the Premier League and then probably sell it for a profit. So,
look, I think as you say there, I think we've already seen he's announced the takeover on Turkish TV on New Year's Eve or before the New Year. So he's clearly a very excitable guy. My worry with that is that generally people who get that excitable, I mean, you look at, for instance, a perfect example is you look at Everton. Their owner loves the club. He's pumping lots of money in. He wants to do right by the fans. When the fans want the manager out, yep, sure, no problem, we'll sack the manager. You can have all the best intentions in the world and still not be a great owner of a football club. My concern is that if he's really excitable, he could be quite taken with, oh, well, this isn't working, we've got to change it. Oh, okay, well, let's throw all this money at players. Oh, they're not working. Okay, we'll get it. You look at Forest, look at how many players they signed over the years and how many managers they go through. I think I sort of temper my enthusiasm a little bit. As you say, it's all that talk about innovative changes. I was going to sort of joke that, maybe he's going to let the fans vote for who should be substituted during games, things like that. Or he's saying
Hit the red
unprecedented.
button for
Yeah,
Smallwood to come on.
that's right. That's right. I
Oh,
mean,
don't even get me
um,
started.
as you say, I mean, he's saying all the right things, and I do like the idea that everyone's saying, "Oh, look, he doesn't want to run the club for a profit. He doesn't care about the money. He's only there for the success. It's going to be great." You think, can you imagine any owner who's about to take over a football club coming in and saying, "Nah, I don't really want to do anything with the club. I just want to pull the money out. I sell all the good players." Like, of course, they're going to say the right things before they buy the club. You got to wait and see. The proof's in the pudding, but. Look, that's all being a bit cynical, and we've all been tarnished a bit by the Allen regime. I think a fresh, as you say, look, at the very least, the short term, the next 12, 18 months is going to be a fantastic ride. We're going to see what happens. There's all these rumors that he's backed by billionaires, of course. It's, the third richest man in Turkey or whatever you want to call it is supposedly backing him, and we're going to have millions and millions to spend. It all remains to be seen. But as I said before, I think that's the most exciting part is now that it's actually happening, we get to see what's going to happen. We've got all the rumors that are out there, but we're going to see what's actually going to happen. And I guess we'll see overnight, potentially, as
And
that breaks.
I think even like the next 2 weeks is really going to give us an indication of what it's going to look like.
Yeah,
What changes he can make to the squad, what sort of caliber of players he can feasibly attract to the club before the close of the transfer window. I think that's going to be a pretty strong indication of where the club's going to be headed in the short term. And then as to some of his personality traits, I guess it's just going to be what people he gets around him,
and
what what
uh,
what what people he brings into the club to
yeah,
if he like, because there's nothing wrong with being excitable, as you say. If he recognizes that and brings in someone and knows someone or has someone that he works with that can temper that, and
that's right.
as a foil or whatever, then that'll work perfectly. But I
That's
guess
right.
many things remain to be seen.
Yeah, and it's good. Like we've seen, I think it's Tan Kessler who's coming in as the new director of football. Forgive me, I've forgotten the name of the man who was also in the box during the FA Cup game. Who's meant to be coming in as the new CEO, and I think that, to me at least, is really reassuring that we're getting sort of people with experience in football and people and this guy who was most recently temporary CEO at Peterborough up until January, so just a couple of weeks ago. People that know football in this country, or that country, England, not this country, Australia. It's really reassuring because that's what we need. And as you say, it's about surrounding himself with the right people. And if Kessler's already been working hard on transfer targets, then I think I was saying in the chat today, the fact this is going through with less than 2 weeks left in the window means it's going to be a really interesting 2 weeks, and where a lot's going to. You look at Newcastle, like they've had months or a couple of months to prepare for the window, and they're still sort of making a lot of moves and trying to get a lot of stuff done. We have 2 weeks to hit the ground running. So I don't think we need to overhaul the squad. I think 2 or 3 signings is probably what we need to get through to the end of the season. But it'll be an interesting window, and then certainly an interesting summer as well.
Be interesting to see how. But all the
No.
rumors that have gone around about
Yeah,
which players like Ajun has been targeting and which players
yeah,
the
that's
Allens have
right.
been targeting. So it'd be interesting to see if any of those ones that Ajun has apparently been targeting actually do, whether those talks have progressed to a point where it's like, okay, once the takeover is ratified,
They just come in.
come on,
Yeah, well,
come on
that's
board.
what I'm
Yeah,
like. I wonder if there'll be, takeover gets announced, and all of a sudden we'll have 2 players who've been mysteriously training with a squad that we didn't even know about. They're just like, oh,
yeah.
yep, cool,
Well, there's been
sign them
players
off
at
the
the
line.
training ground and things.
Yeah,
There's been
that's
all
right.
sorts of stuff going on. So it's just, yeah, it's wild time, but it'll be a good, exciting couple of weeks, as you said.
Yeah. One player who hasn't been at the training ground recently because his move to Wigan has been confirmed now, we were talking a little bit about it last week, is Josh Magennis. Was with City since 2019, I want to say, when McCann first took over. Has been a pretty solid player for us. I think not quite at championship level, but certainly at League One level was a really solid contributor to that promotion success last season. Leaves to sign for Wigan for a nominal fee on a 2.5-year deal. Really well deserved for him, and a great move for him. And we wish him well.
Yeah, look, it's hard to say anything. He had some moments, some periods of poor form, but but as do all players. We just talked about a bunch that are currently at the club that are having poor form. So I don't begrudge him any of that. I think, as you said, last year he was sensational, and particularly in that last about 6 games or so.
Yeah.
What did he score?
He scored
Something
like
ridiculous, 8
yeah.
goals or something in the 6 games or something, and like the goal that got us, the promoted or like whatever, and like all these, milestones in the last period. He really stood up to ensure that we were promoted. So he did. I guess it's one of those things where, like, if you look across the whole of his City career, the goal scoring record's not great, but that last season is why we should, look back at memories of Magennis fondly, because he was one of, him between, him, Wilkes, KLP, real sensational last year. And as you said, this was a deal that I guess, was about perhaps, us being able to recoup something on a player that we before we inevitably let another one go on a free.
Yeah, that's right.
But, this seemed to work out well for him. I think it's closer to his something. Sorry, I was reading something closer to his family. He's got a bit of security, all that sort of stuff that goes with it that we weren't going to obviously weren't going to offer. So, I think it's just nice to see things finally end it was amicable. Like he went, and he didn't have any negative things to say. We didn't have any negative things to say. And you look at someone compared our farewell statement to Magennis with someone. Was it that Everton bought or Everton sold?
Everton with Benitez?
Yeah. Oh no, not Benitez.
No.
There was a player.
Digne?
Yeah, Lucas Digne.
Yeah.
And they were like, Lucas Digne has left the club. And we were like 5 paragraphs on everything
and here's a
has ever done
tribute
for us.
video and everything. Yeah, yeah.
So I think that was, and that's, it's what he deserves. He's done good, the right thing by the club when he's been fit, and he's always tried his hardest.
And maybe it's just an optimistic part of me, but it already feels like that to me was a move approved or directed by Kessler rather than Darnborough and the Allams, and where we're basically, we've said it for years, and it's a broken record of sign players to new deals, and if we're not going to sign them to a new deal, try and get a fee for them while we can, and that's what we've done here with Magennis. And what we normally wouldn't do, we would hold on to Magennis till the end of the season. We'd offer him reduced terms. He wouldn't sign it. We'd be shocked, and he'd leave on a free. And that's sort of how we've always operated. So to now be in a position where we're saying, well, would he be part of our squad challenging for promotion? Probably not. Can we get a fee for him now? Yes. Okay, well, let's let him leave. And I think that's a much better way to operate. Holding him for another half of a season to get 1 or 2 goals out of him and not much more, I don't think suits either party. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, well, let's move on to the triple flashback feature, which this week is a very tricky one. We've sort of touched on it before we went to air. It does come with the curse of the modern day tendency to announce transfers as undisclosed fees. I've sort of used a little bit of guesstimation on these because the question is, can you name the last 3 players we've sold for a profit? And between these players, I've tried to use any news reports that I've seen where, as a hint, I think 2 of the 3 players were signed on free transfers to City, which obviously then means any fee that we receive for them is a profit. The third, I do believe the fee that we received for them was described at the time as quite substantial and was therefore a profit on what we signed them for. But we might have very different players in our minds for this list. So it'll be very interesting to see who you've come up with.
So I have this tendency, which is really, I don't know whether it makes me a bad fan or what, but once a player's out of the squad, I tend to sort of forget that they exist. And so even the other week we were talking about, the record signing that came from Liverpool, and I was like,
oh yeah, we were talking, and I'm like, yeah.
And so it's like, so I really struggled with this, and then I was looking at it and I was going, what are the qualifications for making a profit? And so that was the debate, or the question I posed to you before we came on air. So I think my 3 guesses, which I have here, and I know that some of them are wrong, because there's no way that one of our like the last 3 players that was sold for a profit was in like 2014. But but that's fine. I had no
That's
idea,
fine.
so I
Okay.
picked 3 players that I know we sold for a profit in
And the
some
players
way,
that
shape,
you've
or
picked are
form.
probably, the players that I've picked, it's probably like, oh, we signed them for free, we sold them for £5, it's a profit. Whereas yours are more like, we've actually made actual money on them.
So my first one, and I'm fairly certain we did make a profit. The first one I had was Leo da Silva Lopez, because I feel like we signed him for something, and then we sold for, was it $1 million to Red
Yeah.
Bull or something?
Yeah.
Um,
Well done. That's one of my 3. So there we
oh,
go.
excellent! I got one.
You've undersold yourself so successfully that it's like one
Well,
correct one is a huge achievement.
look, let's go with the really out there, the reference to the really old player next. Which was a 18-month turnaround where we sold him, and then like within middle of the next season, I think we'd sold him for about 3 times what we paid for him. We
Yeah.
bought him for about 2 million and then sold him for 11 or 9 or something.
Yeah, what was it?
That
I
much?
think we
Or
signed,
was
I
it
think we signed him for like 5. I think we signed him for like 5 or 6, and then sold him for like
Oh
12. So I
yeah.
think we definitely
Sorry,
doubled the
it might
money
have
on
been
that.
double.
Yeah, yeah.
But that would be, I think you know who I'm talking about. So Shane Long, who I know is not in the last 3, but I couldn't think of anyone else.
He's
So
definitely our most profitable player, but yeah, he wasn't in our last 3.
bugger. And then look, my third is our record departure, I suppose, or record like
Actually,
transfer
yeah, no, that's right.
received.
I shouldn't say Long's our record sale. This guy's, I'm assuming you're going to say, will be our record sale.
Yeah. Well, Long probably in defense of that would have the best like return for time at the club. But no, Jared Bowen is my third profit made on a player. And then it gets into do we debate about what qualifies as a profit?
Well, it's funny that you say that. So the one player that I had,
sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say the one player that I had doubts on from my list was Lopez, because when I looked him up, I thought all 3 of my answers were free signings that we then sold for a profit. And I looked up, and we bought him from Wigan for a nominal fee. And I was like, oh, well, I'm still pretty sure we got a profit, because I remember that the offer we got for him was like a crazy offer that we just didn't turn down from Bruges. I know Red Bulls were in for him, but I think he ended up going to Bruges.
Okay. Yeah. Again,
the other 2,
once they leave, I forget about them.
Yeah.
Forget where they went. I forget everything.
Well, the other 2. So one of them is one that we've already touched on today, who's just departed to Wigan. So Josh Magennis was signed for a free transfer from Bolton, and then I don't even know what we sold him to Wigan for. But as long, like I said, it could be £5. I don't know, but I'll count that as a profit. So it's your answers are certainly the more noteworthy sales, I would say, than the 3 I have. And then the third that I have, who absolutely I guarantee is a player that you will have completely forgotten about, is another one that was only with us for a season and turned around and sold for a profit, and that's Ryan Tafazoli, who we signed for a free transfer and then went to Wickham for like, I don't know, 100,000 probably.
Him?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why there was this big song and dance when we sold him, because it was like, it's the first profit we've made on a player since like, well, I guess since Bowen, but before that, not many players that we've signed and then sold on for a profit. Because as we say, we generally just tend to let them run their contracts down and leave for free. Yeah. But there you go. Yeah. So I think, so before the Magennis sale, when I originally had these 3 answers written up, I think the one I had before that was Geordie Device, because I think he left during the League One season.
Yes.
So I think it would have been Device.
How much did he go for?
Well, he went to QPR, and I think he went for a decent, like 300,000 or 400,000, and I think we only signed him for like nothing, basically.
Yeah, right. Because he came from, was it PSV?
PSV, yeah.
Yeah.
For like a really nominal, cheap fee, and then I think we got like 500,000 maybe from QPR. But there you go. Yeah, I sort of regret doing these. I tried to do a few transfer themed ones, considering it's January, and now I'm like, transfer fees are so difficult to pin down these days. But
that's fine. Like, I just, yeah, as I said, like I was like, who have we bought and sold? Like, I'm like, where did players come from? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did they go? I don't know. How much did they go for? I don't know. I'm like, I went through the players that I know we sold, and I'm like, the ones that are still like still playing or playing at a good level. And so I was like, oh, Krasicki, nah, he didn't make a profit because we signed him for like 7 million and we
So
only
yeah,
sold him
that's
for
right.
like 2 or something, if that, or was it something like that? It was 2
Yeah,
or 3, I think,
yeah.
too. But but
And even when you think like if you really wanted to think of like Livermore and Snodgrass, you go, oh, like we sold them for like 10 million, but we signed Livermore for like 12 million or something, I'm pretty sure. Like we paid heaps for him. But there you go. Anyway, we shall move on. We've got two big games to look ahead to. We've got the first of which tomorrow morning against Blackburn. Still unsure whether that's televised here in Australia. I don't think it's on KO, so we're hoping, fingers crossed, that it's on iFollow. Otherwise, we'll have to find various means of following along with that game. But look, they beat us 2-0 last time we played. Ayala and Brereton Diaz with the goals in that one. They've won 4 of their last 5 and they sit third on the table. So I guess perfect time to play them, right? When they're in form, hey? I guess a bit of extra spice on this game with the fact that the game on Boxing Day was postponed with a couple of hours' notice. And I think they've lodged an official complaint with the EFL in the last few days about that. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of drama during and after the game between the supporters. So will be interesting.
who was their player that whinged and said it was an absolute shambles? Or
Is it Bradley Dack, I think is his name?
yeah, I hope
Is
someone smashes him.
Yeah. Apparently, I didn't even realize he's been on some reality TV show over there as well. Like
Yeah, right.
it's like he's still playing for them, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he'll play tomorrow morning. But clearly taking his football seriously at the moment. But yeah, no, hopefully someone absolutely takes him out. Would be fantastic. But look, yeah, tough game, very tough game. I mean, it's the form that we've shown against a Stoke side that we're in pretty poor form. I don't know how we're going to go against a side in form.
Look, I'm going to be honest. As I sort of touched on earlier, I was reasonably positive after the Everton game going into Stoke. That all got eroded very quickly with a really poor performance. So I'm not feeling very confident about the next 2 games at all.
So that means that we should play well, right? Good logic.
Look, if my opinions have that much power on the universe, then I will think that we will lose every game just so that we win. Yeah, look, as you touched on, Blackburn in really good form, playing really well recently. And they're very upset with us for postponing the previous game, so they'll give them some extra fire in the belly, which is exactly what they need. I just can't see us turning it around after what is essentially 2 poor league
Yeah.
performances in a row. Against a team like maybe if it was Millwall or like someone lower down, you could maybe go, yeah, we could probably squeeze something out of this. But I'm just not seeing it, unfortunately.
Maybe
We just
grasping at straws, but maybe the takeover would sort of lift the players a bit, give them that motivation. Maybe there's a frustration with the
well,
players
I
that it
mean,
hasn't gone through.
at the very least, with this all happening, perhaps they'll at least have that sense of clarity. Because perhaps that could be an argument as well. New Year's Day before the last 2 league games is John's declared that he's taken over the club, and then there's been this 2-3 week
Yeah.
holding period where players, staff, coaching, nobody knows what's going on. McCann's walking around apparently comforting all the staff, having staff meetings every day, trying to boost their morale. And so, and players would be the same with especially all these rumors that are flying around about, who's coming in and, everything like that. So I'm sure that ambiguity, that the lack of firmness on any of this knowledge would have had some level of impact. So perhaps this finally being confirmed and being ratified and everything, at least that may give them some sense of at least clarity or closure that it is happening, and that maybe they can then just, I don't know, get on with business. But I don't know. I just don't think it's just that just doesn't seem to be happening right now, and I'm not sure why. I'm almost at a point where I want Wilkes to come back to fitness, and that's concerning.
I think the only change that I'd see for the lineup, well, maybe two changes that I'd say for the lineup would be Smallwood back in for Huddleston, and then maybe, as I was thinking, Williams in to start at right wing back. Maybe you drop Smith and put Lewis Potter up top with Eves. I think would probably be the only two changes I could really, unless you really want to go crazy and put Ingram in goal as well. But I think probably those two changes are the two that I could think of.
Yeah, look, I'd certainly see Smallwood coming back in. I have been encouraged by Williams's recent performances, but I'm unsure. Maybe we're starting to get to a position where Longman's the new Wilkes or whatever. He's undroppable, but yeah. Look, I don't know. I sort of go. Smith and Eves had the one game together at Everton, played really well together. Game against Stoke, they didn't. If you're trying to get them to build some sort of a partnership and an understanding, then unfortunately you might have to persevere with them for at least a couple more games to see if they can get it together. But yeah, I'd definitely be bringing Smallwood back in for Huddleston. And the other, the changes you referenced, I wouldn't be opposed to them, but I don't see them happening, to be honest. I think Williams will come off the bench again. Which is, I'm happy if he gets a bit more time, to be honest. Just, hook someone at half time, let Williams have a half or something. I don't know.
He's that sort of pacey, tricky player who's really good to come off the bench anyway. So it's not the end of the world if he doesn't start, because I think running at a tired defence is a really good position for him to be in. We've also got Bournemouth this weekend, who, yes, they're a quite challenging side as well. We did draw 0-0 with them during our poor run of form, so there's something. And they've only got 2 wins in their last 5, so starting to lose their grip a little bit on the top of the table, slipping up a bit. I guess, presuming the Blackburn beat us tomorrow morning, I think Bournemouth would actually be out of the top 2. So a fair bit of pressure on them in that position. I guess sort of grasping at straws that we could get something out of the game. The fact that they're in a bit of poor form, Luton just managed to beat them 3-2. They're for the taking. Maybe getting a bit nervous. They've been top for most of the season. They were undefeated for ages. Can start to get inside heads, I guess, a bit when you think you're sort of already etching your name on the trophy, and all of a sudden it's slipping away from you. There's maybe an opportunity to get in their faces. Maybe, dare I say it, a new manager at the helm by that point. Maybe a couple of players through the door, could be quite a different City side.
Yeah, I think there's a lot can happen in the next few days.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very difficult game to look ahead to.
hard to predict. Look, I honestly, we'll
have 2 new strikers up top. We'll have Yilmaz and Muriqi, leading the line.
I'm not seeing us get anything out of the next 2 games, unfortunately. It sort of feels like back almost in the beginning of the season where we're going, where are the goals going to come from, is what it feels like at the moment when I'm watching. That disappeared through November, and I was like, yes, we're on, we're going places, but for whatever reason we've dropped back off, and we're not making the inroads that we were for a few games there. So that's my main concern. Hopefully, Small comes in, gives the defense a little bit of extra protection. Honeyman, I don't know, recharges his batteries or something so he can just run around like a maniac again and do what he needs to do. But as you sort of touched on in the review of Stoke, he needs some players to be with, around him to support him and help him to achieve what he can do. So, but yeah, I'm not confident. I've put 2-0 losses down for both games.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to feel like that at the moment. As you said, it does feel reminiscent of that early period of the season where we just have sort of struggling for creativity. It's going to be tough. I do think, I do really hope tomorrow morning that news of the takeover does sort of lift the side up a bit. I saw Baz just tweeted out to say that the announcement of the takeover is planned to be announced pre-game. So I don't know if that means literally pre-game, as in sort of as the supporters are going into the ground or whether it means in sort of the hours before the game. But I would hope that sort of lifts the players. I hope that there's sort of, even if it's behind the scenes, Ajun sort of meeting with the players and doing all that sort of stuff before during the day. It should, you look at Newcastle when they got their takeover ratified, and maybe not the best example. They did go out and score in the first few minutes against Tottenham. They did lose the game, but it shows that you can have that sort of excitement and atmosphere, sort of lift the players and get a bit of positive energy going through the club again. You look at Lewis Potter, frustrated against Stoke. I'm sure he was sort of thinking, there's this offer coming in for me from Brentford. What am I doing stuck here? What's happening with the club? All that sort of thing. So that should certainly help the players, should help level the heads. But yeah, 2-0 losses to Blackburn and Bournemouth, I could certainly see also happening at the same time. So look, it's going to be a very exciting couple of days as a City supporter. It's going to be very exciting off the pitch as well as hopefully on the pitch over the next 2 games. And I guess we just have to see what happens. So until next time, which, well, to be fair, could be tomorrow night. We could do another episode tomorrow night once the takeover is ratified, just to talk all things transfers, managers, owners. We've sort of touched on a little bit here, but might go into a bit more depth on that tomorrow night just to get reactions around the whole Tigers Down Under crew. So potentially until then, thank you for joining me, Dan.
Look, it's a pleasure to come on. Sometimes it's not so pleasurable to talk about City at the moment with performances, but look, I'm pretty much happy to come on almost any time.
Brilliant, no worries. And thank you everyone for listening in to another episode of the Tigers Down Under. Until next time, come on City.